Welcome to the InfoMullet YouTube channel. If you enjoy this content, please like or share. And if you'd like to support the InfoMullet by becoming a mulleteer, visit us on Patreon. We appreciate your support. First things first, an overview of U.S.-China relations. The mulleteers voted that the top topics they wanted to cover was Portland and the U.S.-China issue. So this is a InfoMullet guide. That means it's Tim's opinion, right? Of what within U.S.-China relations are legitimate national security concerns, legitimate humanitarian concerns, or nonsense. So here is a bingo board that you can say, this is what I'd like to have covered within the broad landscape of U.S.-China relations. Because I've covered some of these. Like I've covered South China Sea maritime access. I've covered China buying of U.S. debt before. Kevin asked a question on that, so I covered that. I've covered some of these, but I'm happy to go over them again. So let's walk through these. Legitimate national security, the South China Sea maritime access. We've talked about that, can continue. The sphere of influence expansion to East and South Asia, that's a valid national security core. The suppression of Hong Kong, we've got national security concerns going on there that it remains as it was for economic reasons and also interactions. Cybersecurity, obviously, I don't think it surprises anyone to hear that China's been doing hacking of the federal and military, but I think it would surprise them to the extent that actors with ties to the People's Liberation Army, the PLA, have been implicated in some of these major civilian breaches. You have the Anthem and Equifax breach, two breaches which together I think had over 200 million personal identities compromised. Those have been tied now to Chinese state actors. And spying, national security spying is always an issue. Of course, this isn't to say like we don't have any original sin, and it's not that we're not spying on China, but I'm an American, so I'm going to be like, okay, they're spying on us. That's a legitimate national security concern. I hope we're spying on them and being effective at it and following, good tradecraft and practices. But outside of national security into humanitarian grounds, there's also some areas where there's legitimate concern on humanitarian grounds. There's the Uyghur genocide, a massive genocide. We're talking millions of people confined into what effectively are modern day concentration camps, hundreds of thousands, if not a million deaths. And this is happening in Western China. The Uyghur indigenous population, if people have heard of them at all, other than recently, they heard of there were some Uyghur terrorists that were detained with Al-Qaeda in Afghanistan and were in Guantanamo Bay for a while. Those are resistance fighters that have arisen from this Uyghur conflict in Western China. And there's been some terrorist acts by Uyghurs in China. But what's happened, in the last probably 5-10 years is this massive state level near genocide or actual genocide of the Uyghur population. And then obviously widespread denial of civil rights. That's always a humanitarian concern. Hong Kong suppression is a humanitarian. Social credit scoring. This is the use of vast amounts of technology and sort of China-specific internet bubbles to contain their population. And I know by doing this, to all the Chinese commentators who are going to show up on my YouTube and tell me how wrong I am and how I'm too arrogant and too American, welcome. Check out the InfoMullet, subscribe, like, follow, share. I know by putting this out there, I'm going to get a lot of hate mail from Chinese nationalists, which is fine. It goes with the territory. But the social credit scoring that China's doing, very concerning. And then we're over to the nonsense issues. And the nonsense issues are the ones that I don't think are legitimate points of concern. We got the trade deficit and the trade war. I'm going to go over that in a bit. We got China buying of U.S. debt. That's always, politicians love to beat that, but I have a clip out there on the YouTube that shows that's not really that big a deal, and it's probably being overstated. Coronavirus and COVID-19 response, that's so February. And February was like, in COVID years, February was a decade ago, right? We are so far past, the China virus and, all that stuff. It's nonsense issue. Seeds. I had no idea what was going on with the seeds. I finally caught up to it. My view, nonsense issue. It's a marketing gimmick. It's been used before. I'm not too worried about it. And then there's a general catch-all category down here, which is sort of what I call economic jingoism. Well, it's not American made, or their workers are only making $2 a day. That's often based off quasi or soft racist views of Chinese as being inferior or lesser. It doesn't really recognize the economic dynamics that have happened in the last 20 years in China. This huge explosion of the middle class in China, this huge upward swing of prosperity coming. I mean, the average wage in China now is close to the average wage in Mexico, and that's all in the last 10-15 years. So it's a huge increase. And I think playing this, I understand why they do it for domestic reasons, but I don't want to get into that too much. So this is if you want to see one of these, put a comment in. You want to get a specific topic on them, I can cover this. Thanks for watching the video. Hope you enjoyed it. If you'd like to follow the Info Mullet, visit us on Facebook or Twitter. And if you'd like notifications when we post new video content, click on the red subscribe button below the video. If you've ever wanted to become a muleteer and support the Info Mullet, visit us on Patreon. We appreciate the support.